and welcome back to Wurrboy Tactics. Today we're here going to talk about the ultimate Beast Snagga guide. Now, with that being said, my boys, Snaggas have been around for a while. The Battle Force boxes come around. The Christmas box came around. People got on them and were like, hey, this is now becoming fundamental to the first starting steps of being an orc player. So because they're pretty much highly, easily found, and easily purchased because they are the Battle Force box, Beast Snagga Boyz are common. Therefore, I think it's important that we kind of revisit how they're currently being used in the codex. That way, if you're an orc player that's kind of new, you know where to put them and kind of build towards. And we can narrow down if you're an intermediate or a bit more experienced player on some of the key fundamental ways that you can use them to kind of swing your games or matchups and kind of more expand the creativity behind them that we've seen people using the Beast Snagga Boyz from the moderate intermediate level to the high level, WTC level even players. So Beast Snagga Boyz are highly viable, and that's why we want to talk about them today, because it's time for the Beast Snagga Tactics. And before we talk about the Beast Snagga Tactics, let's talk about our sponsors, the Barons of Dice, as they are a good supporter of us and our paint competition. They provide us with some of the dice that we could give out to our paint winners. So check us out in the Discord for the paint competition, and check out the Baron of Dice in the description, because nobody likes taxes. And shout out to Baron of Dice. Let's get back to the tactics. Now, Beast Snagga Boyz, guys. What is a Beast Snagga? Let's say you're new and you don't know what's going on. Let's summarize that real quick, and let's just shout out the units we're going to cover today. So if you check out a unit data sheet and you go towards the keywords, you simply look at Beast Snagga, and the words are right there. And if it's not there, that means it's simply not a Beast Snagga unit. So some rules might not apply to it. As we go through this, keep in mind that if you're trying to think of units that will now benefit your Beast Snagga list and what you own, understand that sometimes they're limited. Let's say a battle wagon can actually transport anybody, but that doesn't apply to vice versa because they don't have the right keywords. Now, Beast Snagga unit. What is a Beast Snagga unit? We have a Beastboss on foot, Painboss, Wurrboy, Beast Snagga Boyz, Kill Rig / Hunta Rig, Squighog Boyz, Mozrog, Skragbad, and Beastboss on Squigosaur. But Zodgrod Wortsnagga is simply not a Beast Snagga unit. Now, that is a bit confusing and odd, as if you really take a look at your model, he has all the encryptions in his body of a Beast Snagga unit, but he simply doesn't have that keyword if you check that out. That doesn't matter. Today, we're still going to cover Zodgrod Wortsnagga, as he kind of benefits in some of the same ways that the Beast Snagga Boyz do when he plays the game. Yeah, I think because his name says Snagga in it, I think it's pretty important that we orc players accept that he's maybe in some ways is a Beast Snagga at heart, and because that's where I wanted to put him. So we just got to accept that today. Now, starting this off, I want to talk about the importance of the Beast Snagga Boyz. And a few points of this is the Beast Snagga Boyz are a pillar of the Orc Codex, as in Beast Snagga Boyz can and will be found in pretty much every detachment of orcs that there is. That should encourage you as an orc player if you're new and starting with the Combat Patrol, Battle Force box, etc. like that, as they're highly versatile. And as we look at their data sheet, we'll explain how. Now, they have a great strength 5. It is a great breaking point. Even if you're a new player going into your Space Marines, it feels really good when you get to strength 6 on the wall. Feels really great into your T6 units. And we just love that it's a bit tougher than most other battle line units. And, it just sometimes comes out on top on skirmishes. It really enjoys the benefit of cover. It loves that it has a built-up feel no pain. With that being said, let's take a look at what I actually find important about Beast Snagga Boyz outside of the fact that it's a high-value battle line unit. It's data sheet ability. Now, when you first take a look at a data sheet ability of a Beast Snagga Boy, it doesn't make sense right away as a new player. As it simply says, monster hunters. Each time a model in this unit makes an attack, a monster or vehicle, you can re-roll the hit roll. Now, if you look at the strength of a Beast Snagga Boyz, like we said, a 5, or it can get up to 6 on the wall, sometimes those don't make breakpoints, right? Is if you're trying to hit something that's T10 and you're wounding it on 6s, simply rerolling the hit roll doesn't benefit you enough as a new player, and you would look at this and say, how does this gain any value? That's because as we look at the leaders and we go into this, that data sheet ability in itself and what it gives to the leaders that it's leading or gaining from benefits from stratagems or other units that are in the Orc Codex is really what makes the data sheet of the Orc Boy stand out. For example, Gaz Gulthraka's data sheet ability, the fact that if you're playing something like a Warhorde detachment and you use Unbridled Carnage, you're simply going to be able to re-roll the hit rolls, and now you can fish for hit rolls of lethal on 6s on these monsters and vehicle units. And that's an example of how you would enjoy that without talking about the leaders, which is what we're going to go into next. Of course, there's stratagems with your Beast Snagga boys, as they're highly valuable for stratagems in some of the detachments that they're in. But all in all, Beast Snagga boys are a backbone because of their versatility and the way that they actually function to support the characters as much as the characters support them. And that's something for you to actually understand and feel good about as an Orc player. As when you take your Snagga boys on the field without a leader or with a leader, they're playing different roles in that ways, but they really do gain the benefit of what they are, even for 105 points. I still would like to see them come down, but just know that the importance of Beast Snagga boys as we go through this, keep them in the back of your head that with all the combinations and leaders we're going to go over, they really do make them shine. So we're going to start this off with the Wurrboy being the worst, quite terrible, and likely to remain this way character out of all the Beast Snagga units. So I just wanted to get him out of the way, but there's still a way to play him because, like I said, the data sheet of the Beast Snagga boys allows him to re-roll a hit roll. Now, if you take a look at his data sheet, he has ranged attack of Psychic. It says Ballistic Skill 5, Strength 8, -3, 2 damage. Now, the guy himself hitting on 5s is quite terrible. His data sheet ability is almost not irrelevant to look at because he just gets more attacks as there's more boys in his unit, but he gains Hazardous. So not only is he not reliable, but he's pretty much killing himself and his boys. His second ability, which is a Roar of Mork, which is a psychic attack that's in the command phase where you have to see them and you have to be within range of them, is quite terrible because you have to be vulnerable to see them and activates in their command phase, and it simply reduces their leadership. It doesn't make them take a battle shock test and reduce their leadership. So he's pretty much the worst, and the Wurrboy is definitely the worst. Just wanted to get him out there. If he is in your unit, of course, he can reroll. He can try to shoot a little bit. All in all, not much to look at there. He needs a re-look at from GW. Now, let's get a little bit more spicy with the Painboss. Now, the Painboss has lost a bit of viability, as GW did recently increase his points at the time of this recording. If GW does take him down in points, maybe he can find his way. Now, what's interesting about him is with enhancements, he does become a little bit more interesting, such as the Warhorde detachment, where if you give him something like Follow Me, Lads, he can follow mounted characters and actually heal them up as he's moving around on the battlefield. If you decide to have a unit with Cunning but Brutal and to stick him in that unit for the survivability of a Beast Snagga boy unit, it can really be a time to shine. But all in all, I think there's a bit of redundancy, in my personal opinion, about this Beast Boss, because the Beast Snagga boys already have a built-in 6-up Feel No Pain. Now, if the 6-up Feel No Pain was a 6-up Infiln, that could be quite a bit more interesting. So just know that if you are using the Painboss because you acquired him in one of your boxes, he does have the ability to heal mounted characters. He does have the ability to heal the characters on foot. Obviously, he regens models into the unit. He's moderately punchy for what he is, with 3 attacks at strength 9 -2 and 2 attacks with his anti-monster, anti-vehicle. But all in all, he needs something to spice him up or to drastically come down in points. Like I said, in Warhorde, he's interesting when you give him Follow Me, Lads, Cunning but Brutal, and those are kind of the more ways to play him. Other than that, he can go in a battle wagon, stuff like that. But he's something that I don't really try to advise that you really surround your army with. But if you start him off, just know that he does have the viability of stacking that durability, which is nice to have in redundancy. You can stick him into a theme of a list. Maybe it's a Feel No Pain list archetype. That's totally fine too. But all in all, let's get to the real meat of the Beast Snagga characters, which is the Beast Boss. Now, the Beast Boss on foot is a extremely reliable anti-tank dev wound unit, which we really lack as an army and as a codex. We really gain value from having something that can actually run up the field and contest vehicles, units, and also play the objectives. He's excellent point value currently at the time of this recording for 80 points, but even when he was 100 points, he was still quite usable and still quite valuable because of his really unique role that he plays in the Orc Codex that other characters sometimes simply can't do, especially not as good as he does with, like we said, the Beast Snagga boys. Now, if you really look at what he's looking to do, as the best Beast Snagga boy infantry. And why that is, it's because of how in every detachment he really finds his way to take advantage of the enhancements and or stratagems to really push the datasheet ability of the boys for rerolling hits and then throttle his built-in datasheet ability, which is the devastating wounds. Now, for example, let's go through it, which are the detachments. We have Warhorde detachment as a he gives the unit not only +1 to hit, and the unit in return gives him the reroll the hits, but our Beast Snagga boy character will likely in the Warhorde detachment pop Unbridled Carnage. Therefore, he will be rerolling the hit roll. Anything that's a 5 or a 6 will now be sustained and giving the Beast Snagga boy boss more hits. He can pick up anything that missed and decide to simply reroll it again to try to get more hits than he mathematically would if he simply held on to everything that hit the first time around. So yes, it is worth picking up the 1, 2, 3s, and 4s and rolling them again to simply try to get more 5s and 6s, as mathematically you're more likely to get more hits that way. So instead of going for your basic sweep attack as 6 attacks, hitting on 2s, re-rolling, maybe landing 1 or 2 5s and 6s, in this case, because you're re-rolling, you're more likely to end up with a total of 10 hits or 7 to 10 hits roughly. And it can even spike to things greater than that, which means the dev wound potential, because you're wounding on 4s automatically on any monsters or vehicles, means 50% of those mathematically are going to be put into automatic damage into your unit. Not to mention how we spoke about if you have Gaz nearby, the boys themselves will be getting lethals, but that sometimes takes away from dev potential, so it can actually work independently. If you were to move this into a Bully Boys unit, the Beast Boss on foot can gain Ed Stampa and into his unit and allow himself to reroll wound rolls again, activating more potential to spike on dev wounds and bringing a little bit of OC to the Bully Boys detachment. If you were to run this in a the Hunt detachment, where people usually like to run the Beast Bosses on foot, he really takes advantage of the kill rigs, which we'll talk about soon, and really allows you to stage around the table. Now, he's good in trucks, he's good in a 10-man, he's actually even sometimes viable in a 20-man when you have to take out something like a Catan, where you're popping Unbridled Carnage and stacking it with Gaz's potential as well. So with that being said, in conjunction with the Beast Snagga boys, he can really throttle his killing potential between stratagems, datasheet abilities, and other units that are maybe around him giving support roles, like we'll talk about with something like a kill rig. But interestingly enough, as we've seen at WTC, he can be used as a solo character. And in other cases, he can be used in multiples, as in you're bringing 1, 2, or even 3 units of Beast Snagga boys with Beast Bosses on foot, and not bringing enhancements for those, as they're simply that reliable for the output that they bring and have that much versatility. So just know the strength of a Beast Boss on foot and Beast Snagga boys can be almost unrivaled sometimes in the Orc Codex for its points values. It's one of our better skirmishing and monster vehicle killers. Just remember, it doesn't have the grenade keyword. But what does get some support role, what this unit does like to gain the support role from, is something like a kill rig. But in this case, we're going to talk about the Hunta Rig. Now, he's an alternative launching platform for those mobs. So we spoke about the Painboss on foot. We spoke about how he can be a 20-man unit. And you can see with this hunt, he actually can transport 20-man models. Therefore, you can take a 20 model unit of Beast Snagga boys, stick the Pain Boy in there, and throw this big mob up the field. So it's a great launching platform. Interestingly enough, it's looking to get stuck in, and some of the detachments that it can be in, it really needs to be looked at from GW, as its overall rules don't really have too much efficacy or anything that really wants you to take them, as their data sheet ability of on the hunt simply add 1 attack characteristics for the Butcher Boys, which are simply Beast Snagga boys that are punching out the side of the unit. His sticker cannon is pretty nice for snagged and helps you kind of get better charges off, but the fact that he's hitting on 5s and only gets 1 shot, it's not nice to see. If it had something more like what we'll talk about in the kill rig with automatic hitting or torrents, that might be more appealing, but in this case, he's simply not. I think GW needs to give him a look. Even if he comes down in points at some point, all you're doing is bringing us a stat shed of toughness 10 for 16 wounds. So if you do simply have multiple units of Beast Snagga boys and you feel like using them and you don't have a battle wagon, can you bring a Hunta Rig? Yes, I do highly suggest that you play either the Hunt or Warhorde, and I do highly suggest that you play defensively until the turn of the wall, as the 5-up Feel No Pain is where you're going to get, 5-up Invuln on top of the 6-up Feel No Pain is where you're going to gain the most value from him from durability and output. We'll say something from the Hunt, where he can actually be picked up from the battlefield with his redeployment stratagem that ends at the end of the fight phase if he's not in combat. That way you can only pick up him, but you're picking up those 20 boys and the character that's being led by them and reposition them on the battlefield. So that's usually a really slept on stratagem for the Hunta Rig and the 20 boys being able to quickly reposition and stage themselves around the battlefield. Of course, they like the CP advantage from this, but all in all, what's even better than that is the Kill Rig. Now, that Kill Rig is a highly underrated unit. The Kill Rig plays a support role where he's playing multiple stages, multiple phases of the game. He's looking to play the movement game as he's actually transporting. He's looking to shoot as he has a War Tower that has Hazardous, Psychic, and Torrent, meaning that he will automatically hit an enemy unit with his last cannon at 24 inches. That makes him actually interesting for Orks, where we can start to damage rhinos, start to actually threaten enemy units that are maybe even character lone ops that we can get within range of shooting and say, hey, I can automatically hit you and just clean you up off the table. Something that Orks sadly missed, where you could put a lone op character there and you're like, well, if he has reactive move, you might not even kill him because you have nothing to shoot him at with. It's weirdly enough that helps with that. He's viable as a stratagem unit, as doing something like Overwatch on custodian units feels pretty good. Letting enemy units and transports know when you pick up and come towards me, I'm going to actually hurt you with this automatic hitting last cannon is something that catches almost everybody off guard. Not only that in the support role he's playing, but in the fight phase. In the charge phase even, of course, you could do Battle Shock, but that's, nonetheless not the most important thing you do, even though it's possible. In the fight phase, the fact that he can pick a unit with the Spirit of Gork. At the start of the fight phase, you can select one friendly Orc unit within 12 inches of this model and roll a d6. On a 1, this unit suffers d6 mortal wounds. But on a 2 through 5, you get +1 strength to the melee weapons equipped by models in that unit. And on a 6, you gain lethal as well. Okay, so what it does is now takes Orks to another threshold of different ways of thinking of how can I peak my strength? How can I actually get the most value out of this 12-inch bubble that I can choose to select someone from far away, not seeing them, and take them to that next threshold of wounding potential. In this case, he's helpful to not only Beast Snagga units, but actually any Orc unit in the Codex as a whole. As when you're talking about his stratagem value and the detachments he's going to use, you'll see that. Now, when we look at Warhorde and we have the Kill Rig, being able to take people to the next strength threshold with that volume of attacks and lethal stacking it innately is a beautiful thing. Whenever you're playing the Kill Rig, it is highly important, though, for you, such as I mentioned with the Hunta Rig, that you remain playing defensively, as he doesn't have to be in combat to give someone that ability. A lot of the time, you're going to be stringing out 20-man units to him. That way you can actually give that unit the +1 strength. Even if you're playing against 10-man units, it's actually behoove you to stage him in a very defensive manner. Sometimes it's actually more behoove you to play the Kill Rigs on the flanks of the battlefield. Now, people are usually worried about that, as they're saying, hey, I can actually get boob blocked this way. Yes, you can, but also you can overwatch people with the War Tower. Or if you have boys in that, because it is a transport unit, you can simply stick a 10-man unit of boys in there if you're worried about something like a T3 unit getting in your way, because you can give that boy unit strength 6 innately. So you're hitting them on 3s and wounding them on 2s, and you're sweeping through 10-man unit skirmish units. It makes your boys more viable, as this is actually a valuable reserve unit, because like I said, since it really doesn't have the tanking potential of something like a battle wagon or Land Raider Redeemer, a lot of the time it's actually smarter of you as an Orc player to play the Kill Rigs onto the battlefield edges and flanks and actually try to take advantage of his aura buffs and giving people +1 strength or lethal. I like to see him in Warhorde. I actually like to see him in the Hunt. Like I said before, with the Hunta Rig, you can use a CP to actually pick him up in the fight phase and reposition him on the battlefield. That drives people wild to say, I can pick up this transport and reposition him and then laws cannon you and do all types of things. Of course, not in the same phase, but when it's time to shoot again. So you're repositioning with something like the Hunt makes his mobility a lot better, right? And like I said, you're not really even looking to play the middle of the table with the kill rig necessarily, because he's not really tough enough at being simply toughness 10 and not having a kill rig for that. So you can actually find a little bit of viability in the Bully Boys detachment and the Green Tide detachment. Actually, for the Bully Boys detachment, you take something like Knobs to that next strength threshold because they don't gain the benefit of something like Warhorde, where they can get critical 5+ for lethal from gas. Knobs can end up really failing into punching into units that are C12, T11. Therefore, simply one kill rig sometimes on your list. Sometimes, let's just say you have the theme and you own a kill rig and it's painted up and you want to bring it. There's actually some viability there as it pushes your Knobs to that next strength threshold, whether it's in Warhorde or something like the Bully Boys, and they can actually punch up and chew through high toughness enemy units. Funny enough, in the Green Tide detachment, if you're playing with mobs of boys, of course, we know Green Tide has been heavily hit, but in that way, Orc players have adjusted and they've said, I'm not bringing the full 100 boys sometimes. Sometimes I'm bringing simply 60, and so a couple 10-man units. In that being said, because Call the Horde and other things are not so are so potent, you're looking to fill the rest of your Green Tide list with other units. Something like a kill rig can actually give you support in that. It allows you to pop enemy transport so they can't simply disrespect and tag your boy units and be stuck in combat for longer than you want your mobs to be stuck in combat. If an enemy unit simply understands how I can charge your boy mob and stay away from your characters and your power claws, there's a chance your character, something like a Rhino, would survive a bunch of punches from boys. That's where a kill rig can come and play, where he's already hitting it with the word tower and dwindling that unit down, not afraid of it trying to do something like pop smoke and armor of contempt and making his shooting unreasonable. It still has potent shooting in that case. And it takes those boys to a actually interesting strength threshold. As we know, strength 4 just isn't where it's at right now in the current meta. So that being said, I personally felt like the kill rig needed to be something a bit more looked after, as I think a lot of the Orc community was looking down on and past this, and I really think it's a bit of a loss in that case. And I really hope that this encourages a few people to take a look at him, as I think he's a bit of a slept-on unit. Now we have the Squighog Boyz. So of course the Squighog Boyz are the nuke or the extreme killing potential of our Beast Snagga units. Now the killing potential of it has drastically fallen off. I will admit that, because since the index, I will admit that the fact that you're hitting on 3s, your mounts on hitting on 4s, and there's a lot of armor and contempt in the meta, the killing potential isn't where we would love it to be. That being said, you still have an excellent volume of attacks between Squighog Boyz. You do get your Sticka punches, which are 3 attacks, and you get your Stompa punches, which are your Squigjaw punches. I don't know why I said Stompa. Punches, which are 3 punches. So that's 6 Squighog Boyz punches coming off. 6 punches coming off the Squighog Boy model per model in that unit. So great volume in that case. Having anti 4+ feels pretty good, and having the mounts being able to hit with a good strength threshold of 6 feels pretty good as well. Like I spoke about before with the kill rig, some of you don't even think that way, but you could end up giving your Squighog Boyz lethals or +1 strength from your kill rig, as the Squighog Boyz are one of those units that's looking to play the middle of the table actually. Now, it's an excellent source for stratagem potentials. Of course, if you're going to play something like Warhorde and you're going to break down the enhancements for this and the stratagem support for this, as we're going to look at the characters that are going to be leading these Squighog Boyz, it's quite viable. Now, its utility as a 4-man unit is something that needs to be more experimented on, as a lot of us feel like in the Orc community at 160 points, it's still not where we want it to be at the time of this recording of the video, meaning that a lot of us would actually like to see them to come down in points. I would even suggest 140, 145, as they simply lack, invulns and still have dying potential. That being said, you can find these in Bully Boys because of the characters that we're going to talk about that can lead them, giving them multiple turns of Feel No Pain, which goes more towards their durability. So there are ways to increase their durability, along as killing potential and really taking advantage of their volume attacks. The fact that they're mounted and they actually ignore movement debuffs is actually quite important sometimes in some matchups and Orc units. They do bring bomb squigs that have the mortal wound potential, which, because most and all Beast Snagga boys lack grenade keywords, they actually need to take advantage of those Squighog Boy bombs. But just know those Squighog Boy units can only be used after this unit ends a normal move. Okay, and the unit can be within 12. Of course, the nice part about that is it doesn't need to be seen. So it's funny enough, it's fun to threaten enemy characters and units with your Squighog bombs and really taking them off the map in ways that they wouldn't see coming. As for in the hunt, how do I see Squighog Boys? They do gain the advantage of they actually get the CP that they're looking for. The sad part about it is the limitations on the hunt means that it doesn't take Squighog Boys to where we really want them to be just yet. But as we talk about the characters, it really helps the efficacy of Squighog Boys, since, like I said, I don't enjoy the simple 4 model units right now at the place they're at. So let's take a look at one of the characters that's able to lead Beast Bosses, able to lead Squighog Boys. We have a Beast Boss on Squigosaur. He's an excellent source for enhancements. So in the Warhorde, you can stick Follow Me Lads on him. He increases the speed of these Squighog Boys in a way that actually becomes more threatening earlier in the game. But really what he's looking at is Edwapa's Kill Chopper when you're playing the Warhorde, as he doesn't necessarily have the killing potential as you'd hope. So he's not as killy as you'd hope in anything really other than the Warhorde in a lot of cases. And that's usually what kind of throws me off about him. But he still has playability, as he gives the Squighog Boys versatility. If you look at something like the Hunt, where he gives it the scouting potential, that's something that makes early game pressure, board control, and positioning quite important for a Squighog Boy unit, alongside their reactive moves, so that you can actually reposition your unit earlier in the game and let the enemy know I can actually threaten you and prolong this fight. A lot of the time, I do suspect that Orc players are a bit too overly confident with their Beast Boss on Squigosaur when they're learning how to play. I actually would like that a lot of us, pay more attention to playing a bit defensive with your Beast Boss on Squigosaur units and your Beast Boss, your Squighog Boy units, as there are a lot of units that actually have the killing potential that the Beast Boss on Squigosaur doesn't help you with. Of course, something he does help you with is his single-minded predatory instincts. Now, that means he has the ability to do a heroic intervention for 0 CP. In that case, that's also why you want to play a bit more defensively, as he can actually position and kind of counteract what an enemy might continue to do. Now, let's, for example, say you have Gaz starting to stick his way out of the battlefield, so he can assist a different unit and position himself to charge next turn into the middle of the battlefield, and he's trying to tank some enemy fire on his 2-up invuln. You can know that the enemy is more likely to shoot Gaz in this turn and combination charge him. You can position your Squighog Boy and Beast Boss on Squigosaur in position to heroically intervene and assist Gaz and cover distance in that way, in a way that's a bit more versatile that other characters and units might not do, and find it worthy, because we're so limited on strats, and you really do need your stratagems to pull off the damage throttling on this. So that's another way you could use him. It's a bit harder and high end to knock off, but it is something you can do. He does add to the charge rolls, so with Follow Me Lads, like we said in Warhorde, it becomes even more interesting, and in the Hunt for his pressure. In Bully Boys, he does have the Warhorde keyword, the Warboss keyword, so he does allow you to have 2 turns of 5-up invuln, but a lot of the time I'd actually like to see that on the next boss, which is Mozrog Skragbad. So for Mozrog Skragbad, there's a lot of contention for him, as he's not where he used to be in the index. He did, of course, lose his great for a Feel No Pain, and he can't find his way to take it. The Beast Boss Squigosaur, like in Warhorde, he could take it Feel No Pain, but a lot of time you're going to take it for the dev wounds instead, that he would take advantage of Edwapa. in his case, he can't take enhancements. So what's really the benefit of taking Mozrog over something like him if they have similar durability? Well, it's because that difference in durability makes a difference. A 4-up invuln is something to be highly respected, in my opinion, in comparison to something like a 5-up invuln. And 4-up invulns are just somewhat rare to be so innate on the Ork Codex. So I really like that you as an Ork player take advantage and open your mind to that, because his durability and survivability is actually a factor, as Mozrog is sometimes a late game bully. A lot of the time, you'll find yourself putting Moz on a big unit of Squighog Boyz, and they'll start getting blasted off the table once you go on the wall and the enemy starts shooting away, right? But it's not likely that enemies do have the combined armed forces to simply pick up all your Squighog Boyz with the knobs when it's a turn of the wall of the 5-up invuln with the 5-up Funeral Pain. So a lot of the time, Mozrog is left over actually able to fight. That should actually, inform your positioning on him when you're choosing to charge your units. So you should pay attention to when you do decide to go off on the wall turn. Make sure you position and stage Moz somewhere where he can actually pressure another enemy objective, or even try to make it towards the enemy home field objective. As once he's running alone and he has his 4-up invuln, he can actually, he can fight on his own and really threaten enemy units. Of course, he's actually kind of awesome for choosing to use for precision. So when you do get into a fight and you go into an enemy tough unit, there's sometimes a lot of efficacy in actually choosing to one-on-one that character when you see him and just pick up that enemy character and gut that character, as Squighog Boyz could bounce some of the times. So interestingly enough, he can be used as a late game bully alongside your Squighog Boyz after the wall if you position him in a way after he charges that he can not die. Of course, he is a lot of the time going to get charged. That's why shot. That's why I actually have on here, he's a rapid ingress target. Some people will leave him on the table no matter what, and there's simply some armies that position and charge you, position and shoot you in ways that you can't deny, and therefore, or you're just in a deployment or terrain you're playing at your local table, your friend's basement, whatever it may be. It may behoove you to actually choose this to be a rapid ingress target. And like I said, think long term, as once you come in, of course, not every Squighog Boy might not get stuck in where they need to. They might, but those guys are the guys you pull on Overwatch. Those guys are the guys that maybe you take on the next turn and start dying and just let it be. But what's important where Mozrog ends up later in the game, because the fact that his datasheet ability has to be rolled for him to actually allow the unit to die isn't something you can reliably, bank on. Of course, Moz does lack the AP that we love to see. So he does have swinging potential. So he's proper killy, but until he's not. He does bring damage 4 with Big Champa's Claws with -2 AP. But again, like we said, Big Champa's Claws are only strength 7, right? You do have the potential to use Gut Ripper to get strength 3 and anti-vehicle monster 4+, but again, you're seeing a lack of AP. His data sheet does adhere that he can get +1 damage against enemy monsters or vehicles, and he can get +2 damage against Titanic. That just the fact that he can throttle like that, guys, is something that can't be looked over. I know a lot of you guys have had bad moments, but he does have the ability to really make a difference in the battlefield and swing it, simply because of his different damage that we do lack in the Ork Codex, as a lot of our stuff is just simply damage 2. So if you find yourself being killed with Mozrog a bit too much in your unit, consider rapid ingress, and consider the fact that a lot of the time you are going to lose a couple of Squighog Boy units, whether it be to Overwatch or to shooting, and simply be left over with just a Moz. Make sure Moz is in a position where he can affect the late game battlefield. He is not a monster anymore. Remember that. Keep that in mind. When somebody tries to shoot you with something like an Eradicator, you simply can't do it, okay? Because he is simply a mounted character now, right alongside the Beast Boss on Squigosaur. I do like to see him in Bully Boys, because if you're bringing Bully Boys and you're running something like the archetype of a Pain WAAAGH, and you're bringing simply one unit of Squighog Boyz, I do like to bring Mozrog for that reason, as he has the damage and he's taking advantage of the wall for both turns. So he's enjoying that invuln and actually making a difference in that survivability of a Squighog Boy unit. Of course, in Warhorde is probably where he can get off the most one-shot damage and volume. His fighting on death is a little redundant in there, as he doesn't, theirs is better and it's better in Warhorde. Taking the unit to have hard as nails does make a difference on this guy as well when he's leading his unit of Squighog Boyz. When you're running him in the hunt, like we said, though, just because a lot of the time the hunt's so limited, he does get the AP, he does get the reactionary moves, he does get to reactionary pick up and redeploy on the battlefield, and that's really where you want to take advantage of that the most, as it's hard to sometimes hunt down your target, as people will pick things that are in the back of the battlefield. But if you can get into it, of course, he loves the hunt, as that's where his damage can finally actually shine with some real AP. And now we're here with the contentious get. Zodgrod Wortsnagga. Like I said before, Zodgrod Wortsnagga is not a Beast Snagga boy. But in spirit, he is, because it's all over his body. It's tattooed on it, and he came with the kits back then. Therefore, he's in this video. So that's where I wanted to put him. Of course, he can actually gain benefits, like I'm saying here, where I mentioned he's much harder to kill than expected. So Zodgrod would enjoy the fact that you're going to use something like go to ground on him. He's probably the most valuable unit on go to ground in, possibly all of 40k, as giving the 4-up and the 6-up invuln, the cover to for your runt herders that are in that unit actually makes a difference, because the unit is -1 to wound, which makes a difference for people's outputs. It will always catch enemy units by surprise on the amount of output they have to put into this. And I highly suggest that you experiment with simply its survivability and presence on the battlefield. Of course, it can punch above a weight class. It's funny enough how we mentioned it does have +1 to hit, +1 to wound. People go, yeah, that's fine, you're just grots. But you're getting it to volumes of punches where it can actually become dangerous. Zodgrod himself being 5 attacks hitting on 2, strength 7, -2, +1 to wound, means he's actually more reliable to punch than war bosses outside of a WAAAGH turn, simply because he can get +1 to wound built into his strength 7. And that's something that's just a matter of fact. Of course, he can also take advantage of stratagems, such as from Warhorde, where he can use Unbridled Carnage and use it on him because he's an orc. So it becomes silly. Of course, you can actually take advantage of what we spoke about earlier, which is the kill rig, where you can actually choose, this would be one of the units that you would choose, to reach out on the fight phase, give +1 strength, take the Grots to strength 2, take Zodgrod to strength 8. I'm sorry, take the Grots to strength 3, excuse me. Take Zodgrod to strength 8, and you can start breaking different thresholds with that +1 to wound to really enjoy the actual killing potential of Zodgrod Wortsnagga. Of course, his early game board presence is very important because he does have that now 9-inch scout. Just the profile and just the screening unit of that giant massive unit of 23 models is something that will always get the enemy's attention, and they will always have to respect wherever it ends up, as that's a massive OC, it's a massive screening, it's a mass of deep strike denial, it's a mass of strategic reserve denial, it's a mass of primary denial. It's outrageous. It can take up firing lanes, and it's really what you're supposed to use these guys for. So Zodgrod, once he scouts, a lot of the time some players that are new with Zod will simply scout forward into the middle of the battlefield. You see how big your unit is. When you deployed it, you simply threw it in the middle of the battle. That's what you don't want to do with that unit. A lot of the time what you're using to do it is actually take him into a location where you can hide a lot of those guys but still take advantage of most of their movement, whether that be in Dreadmob's reactionary movement or just simply your scouting plus your baseline movement, as you really want to take advantage of this unit on the WAAAGH turn. Reason that being is because Zod's secondary rule is special dose, where you can, on the WAAAGH, you add 6 to this movement characteristic. So Zod ends up being a really good home objective stealer. A lot of the time, people won't expect you to be able to get to their backfield and actually take up the field with Zodgrod Wortsnagga. Warhorde is tremendous for giving him speed in that in some ways, and Dreadmob, because his reactionary move makes it so he can reactionary move 12 inches, will make people go crazy. Of course, something that if you were not aware of, Zod can embark in a transport with a truck with the Grots. he can give that scout to the dedicated transport, meaning the truck will actually move 9 inches. Then Zod can get out and do his thing. I personally like to adhere to a bigger unit of Grots, but you know, if that's what you want, go ahead and do that too. It's pretty awesome. He is worthy of CP invested when the time comes, and he does punch above his weight class. Zodgrod has many ways to play, and he is just actually quite viable in especially the Warhorde or Dread Mob detachments. It's just up to you as the Orc player to understand that the strength in him is actually how much of the board he can control and how much of the enemy units he can touch when they don't want to actually be touched or simply stand in front of. You know, you don't really have to charge everything with a unit when this scout, you know, this scouting grot unit can actually position itself really good into the enemy home deployment zone. Of course, you really could use this to also screen yourself as an Orc player, as we don't want to be alpha striked in melee either. We don't want to be alpha striked in general, but we don't want when someone can actually get the initiative on him, whether it's a brick of Gene Stealers with a Brood Lord, whether it's a unit of 8-bound. Zodgrod is one of those units that, of course, he might not survive that encounter, but they can actually take up all of an enemy's first turn melee charge in that maybe mirror matchup of Orcs or other melee units, and end up getting good value in just that simple trade of how much his points are versus how much Grots are, comparisons to what somebody's missile first alpha strike unit might be. And like I said, with his durability, a lot of the time it can catch them off guard that Zod and his unit actually survived it. So give it a try. Zod is one of those units that is always spoken about. He was all over the place for like $5 on eBay. You know, so if you can get your hands on one, I recommend you do, and you actually start giving them a run, because even though he does lack the Beast Snagga keyword to maybe go in conjunction with some of their abilities, he does still enjoy the fact that he can hang out with Beast Snagga units, support them in melee, and support them in battlefield presence and control and OC. And because he came in the box with it, I still felt like he belonged on this list. So fight me all about it, right? So of course, if I missed anything in this video about Beast Snagga Boyz, of course, let me know in the comments live right now or in the video after this, because I really want to, you know, get into it, but I didn't want the video to be like 2 hours long necessarily yet, as of course we've always discussed how the importance of this, but this is a good entry or good way to remind yourself on how to really take advantage of all your Beast Snagga units if you're going back to them, or simply because you own a bunch of them and you want to get stuck in. Or maybe you're just looking to get back into the hobby, and this is the Battle Force box or the combat patrols that you've seen on the shelves at your shops, and you decided to get them, or you're looking to update your Orc collection. This is why I made the video. Hopefully you guys get to enjoy it, as this was the Beast Snagga Tactics. I felt like the Orc community needed to get re-familiar with the Snaggas, because everybody's all doom and gloomy about how we're not doing that good. But there are some still viability in this if you're an Orc player, and especially in you, don't get discouraged if you own these models just because they fell out of favor since the index as they used to be, just because some of them have been nerfed or they're not exactly where they need to be yet. They still do have quite good efficacy and viability in the Orc Codex. They can actually support other units on the battlefield that are not Beast Snagga units, and they simply serve roles for the Orc and the Orc Codex that we don't get in other places that I wish we really did. So with that being said, shout out to the super chats. Michael Mayer for 5 WAAAGH Tactic gifted memberships. Whoa, thank you, Mach. I appreciate that. Very generous of you, as it really helps support the channel with our giveaways, with our paint competitions, with our raffles, with our everything, because it's all, you know, everything takes money nowadays. So, you know, and this helps everybody else get involved as you get access to the emojis. So that'd be pretty cool. Of course, like Joe said, you can hit the like for a free stop, but just kidding. I lied. Okay. And so then, and speaking of Wicked Joe, shout out to Wicked Joe for 5 WAAAGH Tactic gifted memberships. Whoa! Thank you for that. You get, hopefully, you know, paid some commitment. Like I said, I think a lot of the time Orc players are a bit over zealous with their Squighog Boyz or their kill rigs and such like that, and they end up kind of getting preemptively shot off the table earlier in the game that they should. But it is a bit hard with how big and kind of silly they are too. So I don't blame you guys. You know, it takes a bit of, you know, positioning and good terrain. I'm gonna see, and then in case I miss anything in the chats, give me a quick look in chats. He said they're not for me because I play Speedwall. Yeah, that's one of the detachments I didn't mention. So shout out to all you gets. And exact, yeah, Leroy, you got that. So thank you for everybody that got stuck in. Don't want to make this video too long, as I hope you guys can actually enjoy it. So with that being said, there's only one thing to keep in mind. Is don't cross a wall, because we knock your teeth out. Whoa.